Zoom preferences. Video. There. Good morning, dear Dharma friends. It is Friday, June the 25th, 2021. Good morning, Mr. Dalton.
Robert, can you hear me?
You're the best.
Best Papa.
Best Papa. You've had quite a complicated and beautiful ride as a Papa, haven't you? Papa and Grandpapa.
Yeah, I was never called Papa until I had grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
I was just that guy Jim over there.
Well, they've been lucky to have you as their Grandpapa and Papa. As I have been so fortunate to have you as my friend all these years. Lo, these many years and many moves, crises and this and that.
While you were gone, I talked about the feeling that I had back in that small meditation group in 1991 when I came in late and everybody was meditating and all that silence hit me. I think of that often as the silence gathers at the end of our sessions here. We were in a tiny room with eight or 10 people then.
Yeah. There was the time we were in the family therapy room up in the Northwest that had the mirror in the back. That was the smallest place ever.
That's where I remember encountering silence for the first time.
Huh.
Feel the silence.
Oh. Great. Add. Cancel.
Recording in progress.
I just received a text message from Leanne who says, "Hi, this is Leanne from the morning sitting. Thanks for reaching out. My husband is doing all right, although there's been the usual cascade of events following from the initial crisis, which was a GI bleed. He's out of ICU. I listen into the morning settings when I can, and I'll be back. Thank you so much for your support." Well, that's good. I was actually scanning to see if she was with us this morning. You never know, huh? The world The world sends such profound signals, validations of anicca and contingency, and I haven't followed it closely, but there's that condo building in Florida that just collapsed. I mean, and I'm kind of used to seeing that happening. And if they say in Karachi, Pakistan, a residential building or a factory collapse, but one isn't used to Miami Beach having brings it closer to home, doesn't it? However, right now, here we sit, and we could be grateful for a roof over our heads, for having each other, for having the Dharma. I think I'll let that be the poem for today. How grateful to have the Dharma. And let's remind ourselves of the refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Refuge in being awake. Whatever else we do today, we can do it with mindfulness. And we put on our perceptual glasses to observe the reality of anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, disappointment, unsatisfactoriness, and anatta, the reality of the self, that it too is a process rather than a thing. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means it doesn't exist as we think it does. So let's do the ancient practice of sitting together. Sitting here, now. Here in this moment of life, just as in life, in every experience of life, there are beginnings and endings. each breath, each gift of oxygen from the trees, has a beginning. Let us be present for the beginning. Each beginning gives way quickly to rising, expansion. Let us be present for that expansion. Each expansion gives way to deceleration and a pause, and then decline. Let us honor decline with mindfulness. Decline gives way to ending. Not as a mistake, not as something that happens occasionally. It's that decline always ends in ending. And so here we sit. Of course, there may well be thoughts. There probably are thoughts. Awake to the arising of these thoughts, to the trance states they induce. To the creation of the past and the future. So we are cultivating this mysterious awakeness, wakefulness, knowing that which knows, awareness, mindfulness. It's got a lot of names. The experience is very simple and always the same. This is the experience of the moment, now. Using the breath for stability. It's always now. And the experience of what happens now is where life is. All of life. The second of the enlightenment factors is curiosity. And curiosity is something like all the other mental factors that we grow, we nourish, we encourage. We ask ourselves, in a way, Is mindfulness present right now? Are any of the 5 hindrances present now? How intimately can you be present with the breath? Is it possible to really notice the very first beginning of a breath? Is it possible to notice, to be alive with the very first beginning of a thought? Becoming interested isn't something we do once. It's like the refuge in the Buddha. It happens in each moment. So our meditation is not a sinking back into complacency. Oh, good, it's finally calm and I can just rest here. If calm is present, let us be curious about it. So this is calm. This is ease. Or this is restlessness. This is dissatisfaction. This is worry. This is bliss. This is breathing in. This is breathing out. A great deal of our suffering comes from what is called unwise reflection on unskillful objects. That which we pay attention to becomes our reality. If we spend a lot of time on Fox News, that becomes our reality. If we spend time cherishing our hatred, that becomes our reality. If we spend time contemplating in-breathing and out-breathing, the present moment becomes our reality. And we can contemplate kind, loving thoughts like, I aspire to love and accept myself exactly as I am in this moment. Not meaning to deny the importance of things that happened in the past. In this moment, I forgive myself for all the actions and inactions that were rooted in greed, hatred, and ignorance. I put down the bag. It's not a helpful bag anyway. I aspire to let myself go lightly through this day. Whenever I encounter pain, pain in the back, pain in the neck, pain in the heart, the pain of confusion and doubt, I aspire to turn toward it with great love as one of the concomitant factors of life. Nerve pain, tooth pain, the grinding fatigue of illness, the pain of the various mental disorders, anxiety and depression, the mind that is obsessive compulsive. Whatever it is, I aspire to hold myself in sweet, kind, generous, loving compassion. And so we practice with curiosity, with kindness, with forgiveness, with compassion, and great curiosity for every single experience. to come together to sit like this. At the beginning of the day, sets a kind of intention. Perhaps the best kind of intention. I want to fully participate in the day with mindfulness in place. With kindness. A little hafiz for the morning. 15th century Sufi mystic. It happens all the time in heaven. And perhaps today it will begin to happen more and more here again on earth. That people who give each other light often will get down on their knees and with tears in their eyes will sincerely speak, saying, "My dear, how can I be more loving to you? How can I be more kind?" It happens all the time in heaven, and perhaps today it will begin to happen again here on earth, in us. That people who give each other light often will get down on their knees and with tears in their eyes will sincerely speak, saying, "My dear, how can I be more loving to you? How can I be more kind?" And so we begin with kindness to ourselves. What a gift to stop and sit in good company, to not try to achieve anything, to allow life to exist on its own terms, to allow the personality to exist on its own terms, on its own crazy terms. And we might end this morning with that incredible mantra, "I love you," with your own name at the end. And just let it roll through consciousness a few times. I love you with your own name at the end. And imagine yourself today, if you're driving, when you get in the car, remembering, oh yeah, I want to do this wakefully. When you're putting the clothes in the washing machine, I want to push these buttons consciously. I want to be grateful for hot water. I am grateful for hot water. As you make the kids breakfast, as you pick up the phone, as you fire up your computer, intentions are how we create the world. Please now let us bring awareness into the buttocks, into the hands, into the cheeks and the lips. Into the eyes. And the scalp. Curious. And back to the eyes. And notice the lack of sight, the lack of objects. The body is an object. We can still feel breathing very directly. But there aren't visual objects. So what must we do to create the conditions for visual objects? We can form the intention and prepare to peel back the eyelids. And then to operationalize that, to exert that effort of will that is opening the eyes. Notice that the eyelids can be heavy sometimes. There can be some reticence to re-engage the world in this way. And if you'd like, there's no reason not to keep them closed, of course. And then if your vision is intact, if all those nerve endings and connections are all functional, if your retina is still working, then you may have images. Otherwise, you might have patterns of light. Seeing. And I feel very appreciative of seeing, because in that seeing, all of your pictures appear. And so if you have that, I hope you do, you can, I have a large screen. So each picture is probably 1.5 inches high, and I have 49 of them on the screen, which is the most they'll let you have. And that does include everyone who has camera on. So I get to look from person to person and feel what I feel. Some of you are outside. And it's so simple in doing a seeing practice like this to have a thought in the mind. I hope you're really kind with yourself today. So I don't think I have any. There must be a Saturday retreat coming up. I haven't looked. Jim's going to look, I bet. I can see him moving already.
Candle won't have another Saturday retreat until August, I think.
Are we not? Oh, did we decide not to do the Saturday retreat this month?
For July. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I invite.
Travel.
Uh-huh. Just some of you tuned in a little later. I want to read once again this text I got from Leanne just this morning. Leanne, who called in the other morning very touchingly from her car in the parking lot of the hospital, going into the ICU where the survival of her partner was not guaranteed. And she wrote, "This is Leanne from the morning sitting. My husband is doing all right, although there's been the usual cascade of events following from the initial crisis, which was a intestinal bleed. He's out of the ICU, in caps. I listen into the morning sitting when I can, and I'll be back. Thank you so much for your support." For our support. So, another reprieve for them. So, what have you would like to share with our band of beautiful, caring people? I hear Tim.
I've just been thinking the next, especially 3 or 4 days, are going to be particularly
Hot.
For people that live on the street.
Oh boy.
They live on little patch of sidewalk and it's 110 degrees and they're not welcome anyplace. So I've just been thinking about that. If there's any way to offer a little kindness or relief. I looked up on that. Just looking for ideas. I looked up on the internet. What's the best way to help homeless people? And
Right.
and others. Hats and scarves and water, sunscreen. For what that's worth.
Water.
Water's easy. That's kind of what I was thinking. That there's always bottled water is always all on sale someplace. I've done this in the past and buy a few cases of bottled water and drive around and drop them off. They come in those crappy little plastic bottles, but there's a deposit on those crappy little plastic bottles. So
Oh, is there? Huh, that's good.
yeah, there's 10 cent deposit on those little bottles in Oregon. So you sort of get a benefit twice. You get the bottle of water and then you
Right.
get the bottle back.
Right. Oh boy.
Hi, this is Steffi. I just wanted to follow up with the resource list for anybody in our community. Some of the libraries are doing cooling stations from noon to 8, where they'll offer some bottled water and other things. Obviously, they're limited on capacity depending on I don't know how many people they're letting in the library. I know Holgate is one of the libraries, but if you look on the news, you can see the more extensive list. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for the reminder. I've been a little active with a couple of community members with getting fans to them that were hanging around the center. But to be reminded that in our city, a few blocks away, there's incredible suffering from the heat. People will die in our city because of the heat. It's quite something, quite tenderizing of the heart.
Hi, Robert.
It's Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
You're in beautiful surroundings this morning.
Well, there's something more beautiful I was trying to show earlier, but this is my backyard buddy.
Oh, look at that. Wow.
I'm sitting with.
Peace.
Yeah. I wanted to share on the thoughts about homeless. Just an interesting story. My daughter has been active with a group called Facing Homelessness in Seattle. And so she's gotten some great training in just approaching the homeless, as people and seeing what you can do to help. And so I've gone with her several times to just walk up to tents in various places and offer help, and she always has a collection of things ready to offer to them. And it's really interesting to watch, her lack of fear and just, I just stand back and watch her do her thing. Anyway, there was there is an older couple living in a car near us. And we've been talking about doing something, offering them something. So finally we went up one evening and with some food and socks, and she had all kinds of things just to see what they might want. And we approached the car, but it was the kind of closed, there were things over the windows and kind of tentative about bothering them. And she spoke up and told them we had some things if they would like. And they were very hesitant to even acknowledge us. But then one woman did and said, let me hear her. And she said, no, we have everything we need. And that was that. They didn't want anything. So it was just interesting, like you do what you can do, and you also realize that like you have your own need, you want to offer something, you want them to take it, and it's like, but maybe they don't want to take anything. Anyway, it was a sort of a humbling experience. But I also wanted to share that the same daughter, I think I've mentioned before, has been struggling with an eating disorder and some other just some mental health issues that have been really crisis-like in the last month. So I just wanted to say that aloud to you guys because I need to, because it's challenging and it changes every day. And one day nothing's wrong, and the next day the world is falling apart, and it's quite something to live with. So just trying to offer myself some kindness. And thanks. It's great to sit with you guys in the morning when I can.
Thank you, Amy. Having children is such a mixed bag, isn't it? Sometimes I think it's the craziest thing I've ever done. I mean, to become to become profoundly connected with other human beings as they grow from infants and toddlers, and then they start having their own addiction and mental health issues, and then they get involved with other people and marry them. It's such a wild, strange ride to care so deeply about people. So challenging. Of course, it will open the heart, but wow. Easy to say, open the heart, yes. And today, I don't know what's going to happen. And so my quote, heart goes out to you, Amy.
Hi, it's Kat.
Hello, Kat.
Hi. I've been on, I've been in California, so I've been doing a shorter practice by myself in the morning, or a shorter practice in the mornings, but it's just so, it's okay, buddy. Daddy can wait 2 minutes. You just talk to Daddy. That's great. Okay, Aunt, I'll call you right back. Sorry. So it's just, oh my gosh, buddy, please take this to your room. Thank you. Every time. I just wanted to say it's such a gift I've been gone like 4 or 5 days, and it's such a huge gift to just come back to this beautiful family. I mean, it's just such a gift. You are all so wonderful, and to come back and get loving messages from so many people being like, we missed you. It's like, oh, right, of course, because I miss you when you leave. It's just a special group. And yeah, that's it. And yes, another, just briefly with the intense heat, I know there's a lot of grassroots Portland efforts, that you can, and I'm happy to find and share a list of people who are literally going to Costco and buying water bottles and putting them in the free fridges. It doesn't have to be a huge day-long effort. It can just be something as simple as going to your corner store, buying some water bottles and putting them in the free fridges that are around town. And every little thing does help. So thank you.
Don't forget Daddy called, Kat. Oh dear.
I mean, namaste is what I meant to say.
Oh, I see.
I was just muted, so of course. course, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Robert, it's Dave Mayer. I just wanted to express some gratitude that I'm feeling right now because of you as a meditation guide, and your comments about parenthood. That because it works at both ends. You more than most meditation teachers share your personal experiences, your personal journey, let's say, in very intimate and vulnerable ways, which for me, just helps me, work through the journey I'm on. For example, you have often talked about your mother and your father and their, I'll say, deficiencies as parents, but you are coming to recognize that they loved you in their way. And that has been a challenge for me because of how my parents' ignorance, I'll say, but it borders on malevolence at times, affected me through my life. And as I've sat with your comments, this distinction came into my mind that it's not that they didn't love you or me. I'll speak in terms of my parents. Not that they didn't love me, but they didn't give me what I needed. And to separate the need from their love is an important thing because as I try to grapple with the decades of compressed, desiccated anger, rage, and pain that I suffered through my childhood that have not allowed myself to feel, I haven't been able to really go into it because it starts to challenge or question their love. And what's been an important change for me is to be able to separate their love from the fact that I didn't get what I needed. And I can deal with the anger and rage by looking at the absence of those needs as opposed to the absence of the love. And I'm getting it on the other end because I have a son who, the world is changing so rapidly. I'm not sure, whether it's gender, race, or whatever else, that, to use terms that are now completely outmoded. Back in the day, we referred to him as Asperger's, and then it was on the spectrum. And now I'm not even sure if that's an appropriate term to use, but he has struggled making connection with people. And has always, he and I have managed to come to terms and recognize we stand in the same room, but to me, he's standing on the wall, and to him, I'm standing on the ceiling. So we're in the same room, we're just seeing the room in an entirely different way, which has been a great way for us to relate. But he married a Taiwanese woman long time ago, and which was perfect because their inability to read social cues in that intuitive way made them great as a couple. But other cultural factors got in the way, and she divorced him a couple of years ago, and he's been in a lot of pain about that. And he's in a very demanding job, and so in Florida, where he has no people of his worldview, let's put it that way, and heart. So he's basically isolated. And he called me last night and just talked about his sadness and his pain. And I was trying to find a place, because I want him to be happy, and I want him to be in a relationship, and he's thinking that he will never ever find one again, and that he's all alone, and he's so busy that he doesn't have a chance to find someone. And how can I be with him in that and give him what he needs? I'm trying to figure out what he needs. And I struggled with that. I couldn't figure out in the end, it was just, well, listen to him, give him room to suffer and to suffer with someone. And that kind of clicked for me in something you said a little earlier, which, part of parenting is giving your children room to have their own lives and their own suffering, but to just be present with them. And I'm kind of working on that. But the whole conversation has sort of morphed into one big thing, and just needed to process it for a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. It provokes a poem. Come on now. Huh. Oh, there it goes. This poem came to me decades ago, and I heard it as the essence of my role as a therapist. It's by John Fox from a book called When Jewels Sing. When someone deeply listens to you, it's like holding out a dented cup you've had since childhood and watching it fill up with cold, fresh water. When it balances on the top of the brim, you are understood. When it overflows and touches your skin, you are loved. When someone deeply listens to you, the room where you stay starts a new life, and the place where you wrote your first poem begins to glow in your mind's eye. It's as though gold has been discovered. When someone deeply listens to you, your bare feet are on the earth, and a beloved land that seemed distant is now at home within you. To deeply listen. I think you gave your son that, David. Not the first time. Not the first time.
If you can post that, I would appreciate. I'd love to see.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat right now.
Thank you.
I think I will. There it is. Poetry. Listens. Come on. Copy. Chat. There it is. There's a phrase that comes to mind when I do forgiveness, when I do guided forgiveness meditations. And typically we're doing them around parents, but it can be any relationship. And it's a world of difference when one refers, for instance, one is practicing forgiveness of one's mother. But it's very different when we start thinking of it as I'm offering forgiveness to the person who in this lifetime played the role of mother, who's not my mother, but an ordinary human being on her own pilgrimage between birth and death, who didn't have lots of things for us. Didn't have things in so many cases. that she was so wounded and so had missed so many, had missed so much, and then did her best as a parent to do the impossible task of raising a child in our culture. And actually, I was having a conversation with my daughter Tara at the beach the last weekend, and we have a very unusual, it's a blessing in my life, in both of our lives. And we were talking in a very relaxed, open way, and it occurred to me, and seemingly for the first time, which it probably isn't true, but and I said to her rather tearfully, I can't imagine what it would have been like to grow up with a parent that I had this kind of relationship with. I mean, here's the sadness. The world would have been so different. Everything would have been so different. And yet, it was what it was. And to have it now, to have a relationship with anyone where there's real safety and where you can really say what's true for you, which is, I think, Dharma friendship. It's also nonviolent communication too, isn't it? Any of these systems of awakening.
Hey, Robert, it's Sky.
Hello, Sky.
Good morning, Sangha. This is a very poignant conversation for me. I'm currently in California with my stepmother, and I haven't been in their home since my father died. And I always think about Ram Dass saying, boy, if you want to see if you're enlightened, just go spend the weekend with your parents. That's where all the challenges seem to lie. We're really repairing a lot of old damage and comforting each other. And when you just now mentioned how, my God, this is just touching my heart so much. What would it have been like to have that relationship? Because I have that now with my daughter. And what comes to mind is you don't know the light without the darkness. There's a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation for kindness and compassion and openness and honesty. I don't know if I would have known what that was if I hadn't known the opposite.
Yeah.
And how that pain really defines and brings clarity to that light. So thanks to everybody sharing all their stuff today. And I'm right there with you. And I'm really glad you guys are here for me too. Namaste.
have to confess, I never really thought of moving to Richmond, Virginia as a way to escape the heat in the Northwest.
Yeah. It's all topsy-turvy, isn't it? Hello, Jillian Bruce. How is it up there in Whitehorse today?
It's a beautiful day. Yes, looking forward to getting outside in it. We're supposed to get a little bit of heat this weekend, but I gather it's pretty hot there from what I'm hearing.
They're predicting 107 Fahrenheit here today.
Oh,
It's frightening.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Most we ever get is about 30, so I don't know what that is, 90 or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's frightening.
Mm-hmm.
And life-threatening for many.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
For many.
I was reflecting on what is being talked about with listening, and today is the 25th of June, is the 25th anniversary of my father passing away. So I wanted to do something for him, or we thought of him today. But I had a very harmonious relationship with him, and so it was an easy passing, and I was with him. Easy for me to accept. And 6 months later, my mother passed away. And about 4 months after my father died, I always had a difficult time really listening to her, and I think her to me. And I remember going to your retreat. I had been with her in the fall, and I just didn't want to be there, even though I knew she needed support. And I went because I was signed up on one of your retreats at Hollyhock. And I remember going there and saying, it was called Loving Compassion, or it was about compassion. I remember talking with you and saying, isn't this ironical? It's so easy to come here and feel compassion, and yet, and here I left a situation which was the one that I needed really to be in, to express that compassion. And I still regret not going to your retreat, but I still regret how poorly I listened.
Yeah. So, once again, you proved your imperfection and your beautiful humanness. And the last place we manage to clean up our act really is with our parents and our children, with our really close relationships. That's someone said, if you want to see how enlightened you are, visit your parents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember when I said that to you, you said, well, I go back to visit my mother every year, and I book a flight out a day later. So that I still remember you mentioning how even yourself had issues.
Oh, it was horrible going to visit my parents. One time I was doing some biofeedback training in Princeton. And so I booked a flight from there, small plane, it was kind of really cool actually, from Princeton to Montreal. And I had booked 5 days in Montreal to be with my parents. And I couldn't tell them. I just couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to tell them, and I couldn't quite figure it out. And then, I don't know how it happened, but it became clear. And I changed my flights, so I would be there for 2 nights, 1 whole day, and because that's as long as I could tolerate. It's as long as I could stay sane. And in the later years, they were both drinking, and the house was all smoky, and terribly unhappy and depressed and so on. But on one of the trips, my pelvis locked up, like my dad's. And I thought, oh no, I've injured my back, and blah, blah, blah. And I got on the plane and it went to Toronto, and then it was direct to Portland from there. And by the time I got to Toronto, it had completely gone away. I had picked it up from my dad. And that happened 2 more times I visited them before my mother's stroke. And in both cases, it happened after I was there for an hour.
Wow.
So it was so difficult and toxic. And so we do the best we are, and we have mercy on ourselves. There's something I spent a long time talking about. There's a guy called Murray Bowen who was a psychiatrist who, anyway, he developed one of the early developers of family therapy, and he developed a concept called the family emotional system. And it's an anatta concept that when you go back into the family system, there's a system of which you're an element. And the system will try desperately to jam you back into your proper role if you're changing. So if you want to not drink while you visit, it's going to be really very difficult. If you want to not gossip while you visit, it's going to be very difficult because the system will bang on you to become like you always were. And there's an emotional component of it which is not conscious, which is this is how emotions happen in this context, this family system, and it will try like crazy to induct you back into the system. And there's a whole one of the things that I learned and that I did was that when I would go back to visit my parents, I would try to do one small thing differently. Try to stay awake at dinner, for instance, or actually, I'll just go ahead and say it. My father always drank to passing out before dinner. And then dinner would come along, and then he would come to the dinner, and this was always. He would come to the dinner table and then talk and be slurring his words and kind of nodding toward his food. And so on one trip back, I decided I'm going to stay conscious at dinner. I will not drink anything. And at dinner, I'm going to stay conscious. So I went to the dinner table, and there were the ghosts of my sisters across the table. My father was on my left. My mother was on the right. And then I decided, I was sitting bolt upright. I'm going to stay conscious. And the pull towards sloth and torpor was incredible. But I decided I'm going to look. Because there was a rule, you don't look, right? You don't see it. So I turned, and it was like turning a steel. And then I was looking at my father. And he was slurring his words and falling into his soup, as he always did. And my mother started doing this weird gyration with her hand that I realized I've seen that 1,000 times too. But I never noticed it. And so with great difficulty, I looked over toward my mother's hand. And here she was doing this thing, don't look, don't look, don't look. And then when she saw that I was conscious, and seeing her, she sort of exploded internally. She didn't know what to do because I was breaking the rules. And so for several minutes, I looked at my father. I was there's my phone. It was so painful and challenging. But I learned a lot in that. There was a moment of freedom. I had a moment of, within the family emotional system, I actually maintained my autonomy. It was a huge breakthrough. On earlier times, I had made the decision, I'll go for a run every day, so I'll get out of the system. So that's really an interesting thing to try. To do one small thing, you might try this, Sky, to do one small thing differently that you choose because it's not too big, and you can probably pull it off, and then it will create a little more autonomy. This sense of a separate capacity to make one's own, to feel one's own thoughts, to make one's own decisions, and to be true to oneself. That's Murray Bowen, a marvelous man. Well, I need to go ahead, Jilly.
just going to say, I remember visiting my parents at one point when I was probably in my late 30s, and some little altercation at the dining, the traditional dining table. I'd sat at for so many years as a child, and I had a little outburst of something, of anger. I remember stomping upstairs to my childhood bedroom and cursing all the way about how ridiculous they were, and calling out, "Stop treating me like a 12-year-old." And as I stood behind my door with my heart racing and feeling all the anger, and also laughing at myself, saying, "Why wouldn't they treat me like a 12-year-old? I'm acting like one." But just so easy to step back in.
Right.
Yeah. So I could recognize it, but I couldn't seem to extricate it myself from it, the patterns.
Well, even to be conscious of it at all was a miracle. Really.
Anyway.
Well, that phone call reminded me I have to go. So, shall we sing our way out? Thank you all for coming. I'll look forward to seeing you either Sunday or Monday. 10 o'clock on Sunday. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, dear friends. Have a beautiful mindful day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Robert.
Goodbye, friends.